I realized that I really wanted to set this watch to the right time. And this became a little bit of a challenge because in my life, there were two standards for the time. There was the television stations. So, for example, if your favorite television program comes on at 7 o'clock, where I was, every television station seemed to be synchronized. 7 o'clock was the same time on whichever channel you chose. 7 o'clock, turn on your favorite show, and it was starting right then. So I got the idea, well, there must be some definitive time that all these television stations are using, and so I like that. But when I would go to school, the time was different. It was off by, a couple of minutes. I don't remember the exact amount. So when the bells would ring at school, it was not exactly according to the time that the television stations were keeping. So I had to decide, well, am I going to set my clock according to the bells at school, or am I going to set my clock according to, the television station? So I think I just compromised, and probably during the school year, I would set my little digital watch according to the bell system at school. And then, when school was out, I would go ahead and set it to synchronize with the television stations. And so, that's what I did. But I was aware that there must be this definitive time, the correct time. And I was always interested in knowing that and keeping my digital watch, synchronized. I was becoming a clock collector as a teenager, so I had other clocks around the house, and I tried to keep them all synchronized as well as I could to the right time. Well then, I'm going to skip ahead to the 1980s because that was the next real significant thing in my pursuit of accurate time. And this story has to do with another product that sort of belonged to a specific decade. And I'm talking about something we know today as the boom box. They weren't really called boom boxes at first. There wasn't really a name for them, just, self-contained portable stereo system. Well, that's a name that really didn't stick, but eventually all the different names that people call these things, somehow boombox stuck, and that's how we know them today. But boomboxes didn't really flood the market until the early 1980s, and then they were all over the place. And the companies that were making boomboxes, there wasn't really a standard at first of what features that your average boombox should contain. They were all different sizes. Some had better speakers than others. Some maybe had an AM/FM radio with a cassette player. Others maybe had a cassette recorder. Others maybe had a cassette recorder with optional external inputs, so you could plug microphones into it or plug a turntable into it. There were just all kinds of different features. There was no real agreement on what the consumers really wanted in their boomboxes. So the first boombox we ever got in our family had AM/FM and shortwave radio. So this is one of the features that wasn't very common on boomboxes, but ours happened to have a shortwave radio receiver in it. And I didn't really know much about shortwave radio, but I quickly learned. This is kind of neat, actually. Shortwave radio, it operates at frequencies that are able to reflect off of the atmosphere and back onto the ground, and then back off of the atmosphere and on the ground. And what this does is it means that you can receive shortwave radio stations from thousands of miles away. And that's pretty neat. I started listening to international broadcasts, maybe BBC World News, or stuff in different languages, or all these interesting foreign accents, and it was neat. So, I'm a teenager with some curiosity, just scanning around your shortwave dial late at night, and you had to be real precise tuning in these obscure stations, and you listen and try and hear what's going on there. Had a lot of fun with that. But one thing I discovered on the shortwave radio, and I quickly understood what this was, let me play you a sample of this radio station that I found. It sounded something like this.
At the tone, 20 hours, 7 minutes, coordinated universal time.
And I knew that this then from the National Institute of Standards and Technology must be the definitive time of day, the correct time. I had been told that there was something called an atomic clock, which was the most accurate clock ever built. And, I quickly figured out what I was listening to on this radio station called WWV was a regular announcement of what time it was, correct right down to the second. And so I thought, this is great. Now I'll never have to worry about setting my digital watch again. I can turn on this radio station and get that thing set right down to the second. I'll always be accurate. That was fun. Now, it was only a little bit after I discovered this radio station that I started working at a movie theater as a teenager. And by now I was in Southern California in the Long Beach area working at this movie theater. And, of course, there was a clock in the lobby. And I made sure that I set that clock to the correct time as precisely as I could that corresponded with this time I was getting from WWV. And after a while, I started working in the projection room of this theater. I was one of the projectionists, so I was the guy who'd thread up the film and start the film. And we had 6 screens, so I had that going on. And, well, you can imagine, I started the movies on time, and I was very proud of myself for starting the movies right on time.